Section 1. The stillness, the air is warm tonight. It's the kind of warm that feels like a blanket, a soft, heavy stillness that settles over the canyon in the deep hours of August. The only sound is the rhythmic, electric hum of the crickets, a sound so constant it becomes a part of the silence itself. From the living room window, the lights of the city below are a distant, shimmering carpet, a galaxy of strangers' lives spread out at the foot of the hill. It's beautiful, but it feels a world away. Up here on Cielo Drive, there is only the dark, sleeping shape of the mountains and the quiet of a house settling in for the night. I feel a flutter, a quick, insistent kick just below my ribs. He's awake when I am. I run my hand over the tight drum of my belly, a gesture that has become as natural as breathing. It's a strange and wonderful feeling, this secret conversation between two bodies in one. It is no longer just me, it is we. We are waiting. We are waiting for Roman to come home from London. We are waiting for the last few weeks of this long, slow summer to pass. We are waiting to begin. The nursery is ready, the name is chosen. It feels like the entire world is holding its breath, waiting for this new life to arrive. My life, our life. Tonight was quiet, easy. Jay was here, of course. Dear, sweet Jay. He worries about me, alone in this big house while Roman is away. He's more like a brother than an old flame. His presence a comforting, familiar weight. Abigail and Wycheck came over, too, their laughter filling the rooms, their easy European affection a welcome warmth. We ate a simple dinner at El Coyote, the red leather booths and the cheap, strong margaritas a silly, happy indulgence. We talked about films, about friends, about the baby. The conversation was a gentle current, carrying us through the evening. Now the house is quiet again. The dishes are done. The friends have gone home to their own beds, their own lives. Jay kissed my forehead before he left, a soft, protective gesture. Call if you need anything, he said. Anything at all. I promised I would. I won't, of course. The house feels safe. It's a fortress of glass and stone, nestled in the protective arms of the canyon. I'm tired now, a deep, heavy tiredness that comes with the final stage of this long journey. My body feels borrowed, a vessel working on a project far more important than myself. I change into a nightgown, the soft fabric cool against my skin. I walk through the quiet house, my bare feet silent on the cool floor. I check on the dogs who are sleeping soundly. I look in on the nursery one last time, a room filled with silent, waiting objects. A crib, a rocking horse, a stack of soft, folded blankets. It is a room full of a future I can almost touch. In bed, the stillness of the canyon presses in. I lie on my side, a pillow tucked between my knees, my hand resting on my stomach, feeling for that secret flutter, that gentle reassurance that I am not alone. The baby is quiet now, sleeping. I think of Roman, an ocean away. I try to picture his face, the intense, searching look in his eyes when he's behind a camera, the soft, almost boyish smile that appears when he is truly happy. He will be home soon. He will be here when the baby comes. He promised. I am drifting, falling into that soft, edgeless space between wakefulness and sleep. The day's conversations, the faces of my friends, the taste of the salt on the rim of the margarita glass. It all begins to dissolve into the warm, quiet darkness of the room. The air is heavy, the silence is deep, and then a sound. The small at first, easy to dismiss. A crunch of gravel on the driveway that doesn't sound like Jay's car. The rattle of the front gate when no one should be coming or going. I lie perfectly still, my eyes open now in the darkness, every nerve ending suddenly awake. I tell myself it's nothing. A coyote in the brush, the house settling. But this sound is different. It is methodical. It is human. There is a scraping noise near one of the downstairs windows. The sound of metal on wood. My heart, which had been beating with the slow, heavy rhythm of sleep, now begins a frantic, silent drumming against my ribs. I hold my breath, straining to listen over the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. The house is no longer a sanctuary. It is a container, a trap. The silence is no longer peaceful. It is watchful, predatory. Then, another sound closer this time. The soft, almost imperceptible click of a door latch downstairs. Someone is inside the house. The thought is so impossible, so alien to this world of safety and privilege, that my mind refuses to accept it. It must be Wycheck, I think, coming back for something he forgot, or Abigail. But the feeling that washes over me is not one of recognition. It is a cold, primal, animal fear, a knowledge that comes from a place deeper than thought. The kick I feel now inside me is not a gentle flutter. It is a spasm, a jolt of shared terror. We are not alone. I slip out of bed, my body clumsy and heavy. My first instinct is not to scream, but to hide, to make myself smaller, to disappear. My second instinct is for the phone. I need to call Jay. I need to call the police. I need to hear a voice from the outside world, the world where things make sense. I move silently toward the bedroom door, my hand outstretched in the darkness. My bare feet make no sound on the thick carpet. The only sound is the frantic, ragged whisper of my own breathing. The house is holding its breath with me, and from the darkness downstairs, I can hear the soft, deliberate tread of footsteps, slowly, calmly, making their way up the stairs. They are not in a hurry. They know we are here. They know we are waiting. This narrative is told from the speculative first-person point of view of Sharon Tate, a victim of the Manson family murders on August 9th, 1969. The details are based on the established timeline and witness accounts of that night. The doorknob turns with an excruciating, deliberate slowness. There is no sound from the mechanism itself, only the whisper of metal against metal, a sound that seems impossibly loud in the absolute quiet of the house. The door swings inward, a silent, growing rectangle of deeper blackness against the ambient dark of the hallway. For a heart-stopping second, there is nothing, and then a shape resolves itself in the doorway. It is a man, but not a man I know. He is a silhouette, broad-shouldered and dark, a void where a person should be. And then another shape appears behind him, smaller, slighter, a woman, and then another. My mind, still clinging to the shores of logic and reason, scrambles for an explanation. A prank. It must be a prank. Some of Roman's strange, artistic friends playing a sick joke. But the silence that radiates from them is not playful. It is a silence thick with intent, a heavy, suffocating presence that drinks the air from the room. They say nothing. They just stand there watching me. I can feel the baby shift inside me, a sudden, sharp movement, as if sensing the change in the room's pressure. My hand instinctively goes to my stomach, a futile animal gesture of protection. I am a fortress, but the walls have already been breached. What do you want? My voice is a stranger's, a thin, reedy whisper that I barely recognize as my own. Feels foolish to ask. People who come into your house like this, in the dead of night, do not want to talk. The man in the doorway finally speaks. His voice is flat, toneless, devoid of any emotion. Lie down on the floor, he says. It is not a request. It is a statement of fact, an alteration of the physical world. This is what will happen now. But he doesn't wait for me to comply. He and the two women move into the room, their movements calm and purposeful. They are young, I realize, shockingly young. The women have long, unkempt hair and a strange, blank emptiness in their eyes. They are not looking at me. They are looking through me. They are just following orders. The man is the center of their universe, the source of their gravity. He gestures with something in his hand, something dark and metallic that doesn't catch the light. A gun. The sight of it is so incongruous in the soft, feminine space of my bedroom that it feels like a tear in reality. Guns belong in movies, in news reports from faraway wars. They do not belong here, in this quiet, peaceful room filled with the scent of my perfume and the promise of a new life. They heard me from the room, their hands not touching me, but their presence a physical force, pushing me forward. We move down the hallway, and I see that they have the others. Wycheck and Abigail are there, their faces pale masks of confusion and disbelief. Wycheck is trying to speak, to reason with them, his English thick with his Polish accent. What is this? What is money? "We will give you money." But they do not seem to hear him. Money is not what they are here for. We are all guided down the stairs and into the living room, the beautiful open space where we had laughed and talked just a few hours before. Now, the geometry of the room feels wrong, menacing. The familiar objects, the sofa, the large stone fireplace, the books on the shelves, all seem like silent, helpless witnesses. The air has thinned, becoming sharp and metallic. This is no longer my home. It is their stage. They make us all lie down on the floor, face down. The cool stone floor is a shock against my cheek. I can feel the hard, round pressure of the baby beneath me, and a wave of pure, unthinking terror washes over me. I try to shift my weight, to protect him, to cushion him from the hardness of the floor, from the hardness of this new reality. And then I see Jay. They have him too. He is kneeling, his hands bound. He is looking at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a fierce, protective anger. He is not looking at the intruders. He is looking only at me, trying to communicate something with his gaze, something to give me strength. "I am the devil," the man with the gun says, his voice still unnervously calm. "I am here to do the devil's business." The words are so absurd, so theatrical, that for a moment, the fear is replaced by a sense of the surreal. It is a line from a bad movie. This cannot be real, but it is real. The man begins to pace, and he pulls out a long piece of rope. He walks over to me, and I can feel the rough, scratchy texture of the rope as he slings it over the large wooden beam that runs across the ceiling. He loops it around my neck. The rope is loose, but its weight is a promise. He then drapes the other end around Jay's neck, binding us together, 2 feet apart. In this grotesque tableau, it is Jay who breaks the spell of terrified silence. He looks at my swollen belly, at the rope around my neck, and his fear gives way to a final, desperate act of courage. "Can't you see she's pregnant?" he says, his voice shaking but clear. "For God's sake, be gentle with her." The plea hangs in the air for a moment, a single, fragile appeal to a humanity that is simply not present in the room. The man with the gun turns to look at Jay, his expression unchanging. And then, without a word, he raises the gun. The sound is not like it is in the movies. It is not a loud, resonant boom. It is a sharp, flat, deafening crack, a sound that seems to tear the air apart. Jay's body convulses, a sudden, violent jolt. A dark, blossoming stain appears on his white shirt. He makes a sound, a soft, surprised exhalation of air, and then he slumps forward, his body pulled taut by the rope that still connects us. The screaming starts then. I don't know if it is mine or Abigail's. It is just a sound, a raw, animal noise of pure, undiluted horror. The stillness is gone. The last fragile membrane of hope, the idea that this was a robbery, that we could reason with them, that we might survive, has just been obliterated. The air is now filled with the sharp, acrid smell of gunpowder and the coppery metallic scent of fresh blood. This is not about money. This is not about anything that makes sense. This is a ceremony, and we are the sacrifices. Time dissolves. The orderly, second-by-second progression of life has shattered into a kaleidoscope of fragmented, horrifying moments. The initial, sharp crack of the gunshot that killed Jay echoes and re-echoes in the sudden, ringing silence of the room, a sound that seems to have permanently altered the acoustic properties of the air itself. The world is now muffled, distant, as if I am hearing it from the bottom of a deep pool of water. My own body feels like a stranger's. The adrenaline is a roaring fire in my veins, a pure, chemical scream that obliterates thought. There is no past, no future, only this eternal, terrifying present. The heavy, precious weight in my belly, which had been a source of such profound and quiet joy just an hour ago, is now a source of a new and unbearable kind of terror. It is not just my life that is balanced on this knife's edge. It is his. It is a life that has not yet had a chance to begin, to feel the sun, to draw a single breath. The thought is a physical blow, more real and more painful than the rough bite of the rope against my neck. The chaos that erupts after Jay's death is a blur of motion and sound. Wojciech, who had been lying so still, suddenly finds a desperate, final surge of strength. He breaks free from his bindings and lunges for the front door, a wild, guttural cry tearing from his throat. He is a man running not toward safety, but simply away from the absolute certainty of death in this room. The man with the gun, the one they call Tex, pursues him with a calm, almost leisurely stride. It is a chase that is over before it begins. I can hear the sounds from the lawn outside. The heavy, sickening thud of a body falling, a series of wet, percussive impacts, and then a long, low groan that slowly fades into the sound of the crickets. The two women, who had been standing like silent, waiting statues, are now jolted into action. As if a switch has been flipped, they turn their attention to Abigail. Abigail, who had been frozen in a silent scream, finds her feet. She runs, her movements clumsy with terror, not toward the front door, but toward the back of the house, toward the pool, toward the promise of the dark, open space of the canyon. One of the women, the one with the wild, dark hair, chases her down. It is not a chase. It is a hunt. I can hear Abigail's desperate, pleading cries, a string of no, please, no, that are cut short by a series of sharp, grunting sounds and the thin, high wail of her final moments. The room is empty now, save for me and the woman with the dead eyes who stands over me. Her name, I think I heard them say, is Sadie. She is holding a knife, its blade glinting in the dim light from the hallway. She looks at me, and there is nothing there. No anger, no pity, no humanity. It is like looking into the eyes of an insect. The emptiness is the most terrifying thing of all. I am no longer screaming. The terror has gone beyond sound. It has become a cold, sharp, crystalline thing in the center of my chest. My mind, in a strange act of self-preservation, begins to detach. I am floating somewhere above the scene, a dispassionate observer watching a tableau of horror unfold on the floor below. I see a pregnant woman, her face a pale, tear-streaked mask, her body heavy and awkward. I see the still, silent form of the man she is tied to, his lifeblood a dark, spreading stain on the floor. I see the woman with the knife, a creature from a nightmare, moving with a calm, deliberate purpose. The thought of my baby, a thought that had been a source of such paralyzing terror just moments before, now becomes a strange, singular point of focus, an anchor in this swirling vortex of unreality. I have to save him. It is the only thought that remains, the only imperative that my shattered mind can hold on to. I am a vessel. I am a mother. And the pure, biological imperative to protect the life inside me is a force more powerful than the fear of my own death. I begin to plead. The words come out in a ragged, broken stream. I am not pleading for myself. I am pleading for him. Please, I whisper, my voice hoarse. Don't, my baby. Let me have the baby. You can have me. Just let me have the baby first. I am trying to bargain with the void, to reason with an insanity that has no logic. I am offering my own life as a trade, a future sacrifice in exchange for a few more weeks of life for him. I am trying to negotiate with the devil, as the man had called himself. The woman with the knife, Sadie, looks down at me, and for the first time her expression changes. A small, cold smile touches her lips. It is a smile of pure, absolute contempt. Look, bitch, she says, her voice a flat, nasal drawl. I have no mercy for you. You're going to die, and you'd better get used to it. The words are a final, physical blow. They extinguish the last, flickering ember of hope, the last, desperate, animal belief that there might be a way out of this. There is no bargain to be made. There is no mercy to be found. There is only this room, this woman, this knife. The detached observer that was floating above the scene now crashes back into my own body with a sickening jolt. I am no longer watching. I am here. I can feel the cold of the floor, the rough pull of the rope, the heavy, precious weight of the life inside me, and I can see the knife, rising and falling in the dim, shadowed light, beginning its work. The stillness is over, and the pain is about to begin. The first cut is a surprise. It is not the searing, white-hot agony I might have imagined. It is a sharp, cold, almost surgical line of pain across my ribs, a sensation so alien that my mind takes a moment to process it. It is the feeling of being unmade, of the body's essential wholeness being violated. It is the feeling of being turned from a person into a thing, a piece of meat on a butcher's block. The detachment I had briefly found shatters completely, and I am nothing but a vessel of pure, physical sensation. The pain is the new reality. It is a reality that eclipses everything else. The quiet canyon, the distant city lights, the memory of a happy dinner just a few hours ago. All of that belongs to another lifetime, to another person who was not me. This person, the one lying on the cold stone floor, exists only in this singular, searing moment. The woman above me works with a strange, methodical rhythm, a kind of grim, dispassionate industry. There is no rage in her movements, no frenzy. It is a job to be done. The knife rises and falls. Each impact is a new and distinct explosion of pain, a fresh starburst of agony that radiates through my body. I can feel the warm, sticky wetness spreading across my skin, the life leaking out of me. My body, this vessel I had so carefully nurtured for my son, is now fighting a desperate, losing battle. It is trying to survive, to pump blood, to send signals of pain and terror to a brain that can no longer process them into coherent thought. My own screams are a distant, animal sound, a noise made by a creature I no longer recognize. And then, through the red fog of pain, another figure appears. It is the man, Texas. He has returned from the lawn, from the slaughter of my friends. He kneels down beside me, his presence a new, suffocating weight. He takes the knife from the woman, as if they are merely changing shifts on an assembly line. His movements are different. They are heavier, more brutal. The pain intensifies, becoming a single, overwhelming wave that drowns out everything else. In this extremity, a strange and unexpected clarity emerges. The pain is so absolute, so all-consuming, that it becomes a kind of purity. There is no room for fear anymore, no room for hope, no room for bargaining. There is only the pain and the slow, inexorable process of my own unmaking. My thoughts, which had been a chaotic storm of terror, now become strangely simple. I think of the baby. I am no longer trying to save him. I am trying to say goodbye. It is a silent, internal conversation, a desperate, final apology from a mother who has failed in her most fundamental duty. I am sorry I could not keep you safe. I am sorry you will never see the sun. I am sorry you will never know the feel of your father's arms. My body, which was to be his first home, has become his tomb. The thought is an agony deeper than any the knife can inflict. I think of Roman. I see his face, not as it was when he left for London, but as it was on our wedding day, his eyes filled with a light I had never seen before. I try to hold onto that image, a single, perfect memory to carry with me into the encroaching darkness. I want his face to be the last thing I see. The sounds of the room are fading, the grunting efforts of the man above me, the ragged, desperate gasps of my own breathing. It is all becoming a distant, muffled hum. My vision is narrowing, the edges of the room blurring into a dark, closing tunnel. The city lights I could see from the window are gone. The world is shrinking, collapsing into this single point of suffering on a living room floor. There is a final crushing weight, a final blinding flash of pain, and then a kind of release. The pain does not end, but it ceases to matter. I am floating again, but this time it is different. I am not above the scene. I am simply untethered from it. I can feel my body, but it is no longer mine. It is just a thing on the floor, a broken, bleeding vessel. The last sensation is not one of pain, but of a profound and unexpected cold. It is a deep, internal cold, a chill that seems to be radiating from the very center of my being, spreading outward to my fingertips, my toes, my skin. It is the feeling of the body's furnace going out, the final embers of life winking into darkness. The humming in my ears grows louder, swallowing the last echoes of the violent room. The tunnel of my vision closes to a single pinprick of light. I think of my son. I think of Roman. And then, There is no more thought. There is no more pain. There is only the stillness. A stillness deeper and more absolute than the quiet of the canyon. A stillness that is not the absence of sound, but the absence of everything. It is the end, and it is a beginning. The stillness is where my story ends, and where a new, darker story, the one the world will tell about this night, is about to begin. Section 2. The echo, the quiet that follows, is not a quiet at all. It is a presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from the threads of what just happened. The air in the room is thick with it, a tangible thing that smells of copper and fear. My body is a stranger on the floor, a discarded costume from a play that has reached its brutal, final act. The connection is severed. The pain is gone, but the memory of it, the echo, vibrates in the space where I used to be. I am a witness now, untethered, a silent observer in a room that was once mine. The two women and the man, Tex, are still here. Their adrenaline is gone, replaced by a strange, almost businesslike postscriptum. They are no longer agents of chaos. They are just young, tired people in a room full of blood. Their movements are clumsy, their breathing ragged. The godlike certainty they possessed just moments ago has evaporated, leaving behind a kind of hollow, twitchy energy. One of them, Sadie, the one with the empty eyes, walks over to a towel. Her hands are shaking now. She dips it into the dark, pooling blood on the floor. The blood that belongs to the woman who was me. She walks to the front door, her bare feet leaving faint, pinkish prints on the stone. With a kind of grim, childish deliberation, she writes on the door. One word, pig. The letters are crude, dripping, a grotesque parody of finger painting. It is the signature, the final, nihilistic flourish on their masterpiece. It is their message to the world, a world they believe they are at war with. It is a word meant to incite terror, to start a revolution. But in this quiet, blood-soaked room, it just looks pathetic. A small, ugly word scrawled in the aftermath of a great and terrible sadness. They do not linger. There is no triumphant survey of their work. There is only a hurried, nervous exit. They gather themselves, their weapons, their ropes, and they are gone, slipping back out into the canyon night as silently as they arrived. They leave the door slightly ajar, a final, careless punctuation mark on the horror. They leave behind the silence, the smell, and the 5 broken bodies that were, just hours ago, my friends, my family, myself. The house is still again, but it is a new kind of stillness. It is the stillness of a battlefield after the fighting has stopped. It is a stillness filled with the silent, screaming testimony of what has occurred. The crickets outside continue their relentless, indifferent song. The city lights below continue to twinkle, a million lives continuing, unaware. The moon casts its pale, indifferent light through the large windows, illuminating the scene with a cold, spectral beauty. It paints silver lines on the dark pools of blood, on the pale, still faces of the dead. Time becomes a strange, fluid thing. There are no minutes, no hours, only a long, slow drift in the quiet dark. The house begins its own slow, sad process of grieving. The air grows cooler. A faint breeze rustles the leaves outside. The dogs, who had been locked away and silent, begin to whine, a low, mournful sound from another part of the house, a sound of confusion and loss. The first hint of the outside world's return is the sky. It begins to lighten in the east, a slow, grudging transformation from inky black to a deep, bruised purple, then to a soft, hazy gray. The dawn is coming. Feels like an intrusion, a violation. The night had been a shroud, a protective darkness that held the horror in a kind of suspended animation. The daylight will be a harsh, unforgiving witness. It will expose everything. And with the daylight comes the first human sound from outside the circle of death. It is the sound of a newspaper being thrown onto the driveway, the soft thud of ordinary life continuing, oblivious. Then comes the sound of a car engine, of a neighbor leaving for work. The world is waking up, and soon, it will discover the nightmare that has been sleeping in this house. The person who breaks the seal is the housekeeper, Winifred, Her arrival is a blast of normalcy in this hermetically sealed world of horror. The sound of her key in the lock, the familiar click of the door opening. It is the sound of the real world re-entering the stage. Her gasp is a physical thing, a sharp, tearing intake of air that seems to suck all the remaining stillness from the room. She sees the bodies. She sees the blood. She sees the word on the door. And she flees. Her screams a raw, piercing alarm that finally shatters the canyon's long, terrible silence. Her screams are a signal. The bubble has burst. The private horror of 10050 Cielo Drive is about to become a public spectacle. The world, which had been so distant, is now rushing toward this house. I can almost feel the vibrations of it, the approaching sirens, the frantic phone calls, the dawning, horrified realization spreading from person to person, from house to house, from city to city. The first police car arrives, its red and blue lights flashing silently against the windows, painting the blood-soaked room in strobing, garish colors. The officers who enter do so with a cautious, professional dread. Their faces grim, their hands on their holsters. They are young. They have never seen anything like this. Their training could not have prepared them for this. They step carefully, their shoes sticking slightly to the floor. They look at the bodies, at the scene of carnage, and their professional composure cracks, replaced by a look of pure human shock. They are the first emissaries from the world of the living, and they have just stepped into the land of the dead. The investigation, the circus, the legend. It all begins now with their first horrified gaze. The arrival of the police is like the breaking of a dam. What had been a place of absolute, deathly stillness is now a swirling vortex of activity. A frantic, almost chaotic, attempt by the living to impose order on a scene of absolute disorder. The initial shock of the first two officers gives way to a grim procedural ballet. More cars arrive. Their sirens a rising chorus that echoes through the canyon. The house, my house, is no longer a home. It is a crime scene. It is a number, a location, a problem to be solved. I watch them as they work, these men in their crisp blue uniforms. They move with a strange mixture of reverence and clinical detachment. They speak in low, clipped tones, their voices full of jargon and acronyms that mean nothing to me. They string up yellow tape, creating a fragile, arbitrary boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead. It is a piece of theater, a ritual to make themselves feel safe, to create a sense of control in a place where all control has been lost. They photograph everything, every angle of the room, every bloodstain, every overturned piece of furniture. The flash of their cameras is a series of small, silent explosions, each one capturing and freezing a moment of the horror, turning it into a piece of evidence, a slide in a presentation, a glossy 8x10 for a case file. They are taking my death and breaking it down into its component parts, cataloging the brutality, measuring the chaos. They are trying to read the story that the room is telling them, but they are only seeing the words, not the meaning behind them. The detectives arrive, men in tired suits who carry, with them, an air of weary authority. They are the high priests of this new ceremony. They walk through the scene with a practiced eye, their faces grim, impassive masks. They look at the bodies on the floor, at Jay, at Wycheck, at Abigail, at me. They are no longer people to them. They are victims. They are clues. Victim number 1, victim number 2. My body, the vessel that held a life and a future, is now just the pregnant one. A detail that adds a layer of sensational horror to their report. They focus on the details that the killers left behind. The rope, the knives, the bloody word on the door. They see the pig, and their minds immediately begin to construct a narrative. Drug deal. One of them says, his voice a low grumble. Some kind of dope deal gone bad. They are looking for a motive that fits their world, a logic they can understand. Robbery, revenge, drugs. They cannot yet conceive of a motive that is pure, nihilistic chaos, a crime committed for the sake of the crime itself. They are looking for a story that makes sense, and so they will miss the truth. The most jarring intrusion is the arrival of the coroner's team. They come with their black bags and their gurneys, their movements practiced and impersonal. They are the final stage of the process, the ones who will officially transform us from people into objects. They perform their work with a quiet, somber efficiency. They examine the wounds, they take notes, they place our bodies into the dark, zippered bags. Watching them zip the bag over the woman who was me is the most surreal moment yet. It is a final, definitive act of separation. That body, which I had inhabited for 26 years, which had felt love and pain and the miraculous flutter of new life, is now just a piece of evidence, an object to be transported, examined, and ultimately put into the ground. The finality of it is absolute. I am no longer Sharon Tate. I am a case file. I am a headline. I am a ghost. And then they find the children. Not my child, the one who died with me, but the other children, the two small, sleeping forms upstairs in their beds. Sydney and Justin. The police find them, asleep, unharmed, completely unaware of the horror that has unfolded just one floor below them. The discovery sends a new wave of shock through the house. It is a small, miraculous mercy in the midst of a massacre. The killers, for some reason, had spared them. The children are gently woken and carried out of the house, their faces bewildered, their eyes shielded from the carnage in the living room. They are the only living piece of me that remains in this place. They are the future that was stolen. Watching them be led away, small and vulnerable, into a world that will now be defined by this single brutal night, is an agony far deeper than my own death. They will grow up with this story, this ghost, as their constant companion. Their lives are now irrevocably cleaved into a before and an after. The house is empty now of all the people who had lived in it. It is filled only with the investigators, the men who are trying to piece together the last few hours of our lives. They are looking for fingerprints, for fibers, for clues. They are searching for the ghosts who did this, unaware that another ghost is watching them, a silent witness to their slow, methodical work. They are searching for a story, but they are standing in the middle of it, unable to see the whole picture. The truth is not in the fingerprints or the fibers. The truth is in the empty eyes of the young woman with the knife, in the nihilistic glee of the man who called himself the devil. It is a truth that is beyond their comprehension, a truth that has come from another world, another reality to shatter this one. And it is a truth that I, in my silent, weightless state, now understand with a perfect, terrible clarity. The news spreads like a contagion. It moves through the phone lines, across the radio waves, and flickers to life on the television screens in the living rooms of strangers. The name of the house, Cielo Drive, and the name of the woman who lived there, Sharon Tate, become a mantra of shock and horror. The private agony of this room has become public property. I feel the ripples of it, the waves of grief and disbelief as they wash over the city and then the world. The first to be hit are the ones who loved us. I feel the moment the news reaches my parents, a clean, shattering blow that splinters their world into a million pieces. The pain is so pure, so absolute, it feels like a physical force in the space where I am. A father's roar of anguish, a mother's silent, collapsing grief. It is a pain I cannot soothe, a wound I cannot heal. I am the cause of it, and I am helpless to stop it. I feel it reach Roman, an ocean away in London. The phone call that will cleave his life in two. The initial confusion, the dawning horror, the final crushing weight of understanding. The man who was so full of life, of creative fire, of a restless, searching energy, is now hollowed out. A ghost himself, haunted by a loss so profound it has no name. He will be on a plane, flying back into the heart of the nightmare, his mind a frantic, replaying loop of our last conversation, our last goodbye, searching for a sign, a premonition, something that could have changed the unchangeable. There was nothing. It was just an ordinary day until it wasn't. The story that the world begins to tell about this night is a story of strangers. They see the glamour, the celebrity, the Hollywood of it all. They see the beautiful, pregnant actress, the famous director, the wealthy heiress, the celebrity hairstylist. They construct a narrative that fits their preconceptions of this world. A world of drugs, of strange parties, of dark, decadent secrets. The newspapers are already hinting at it. Ritualistic slaying, they call it. They are looking for a story that is as glamorous and as sordid as their image of our lives. They are turning our tragedy into a movie, a piece of lurid entertainment. They are making us into characters, simplifying our lives and our deaths to fit a narrative they can sell. They do not see the quiet moments. They do not see Jay, sitting with me for hours, just being a friend, his quiet presence a bulwark against my loneliness. They do not see Abigail, reading a book by the pool, her face a picture of quiet concentration. They do not see Wojciech, arguing passionately about a film he loved, his hands gesturing wildly, his heart so full of life. They do not see me, a young woman in love with her husband, overwhelmed with a fierce, protective love for the child growing inside her. A woman who was more excited about motherhood than about any movie role. They see the characters, not the people. And so, they will never understand the true horror of what was lost in this room. The horror was not that celebrities were killed. The horror was that people were. As the day wears on, the house becomes a sterile, scientific environment. The initial chaos of the first responders gives way to the meticulous, almost reverent work of the forensic teams. They are like priests of a new religion, the religion of evidence. They dust for fingerprints, they scrape for samples, they measure the trajectory of blood spatter on the walls. They are creating a new kind of story, a story told in the language of science. They are looking for the stray hair, the single fiber, the partial print that will connect the killers to this room. They are so focused on the microscopic, on the tangible evidence, that they miss the larger, more profound evidence that is all around them. The evidence is in the sheer, senseless brutality of the act. It is in the overkill, the multiple stab wounds that go far beyond what was necessary to kill. It is in the performative, ritualistic nature of the scene. The rope over the beam, the word on the door. This was not a crime of passion. Passion is hot, immediate, personal. This was cold. This was impersonal. This was an act of theater, a statement. I watch them, these careful, methodical men, and I want to scream. I want to tell them, you are looking in the wrong place. The clue is not in the evidence you are collecting. It is in the evidence you are ignoring. The clue is the lack of a motive. The clue is the randomness. The clue is the absolute, inhuman emptiness of it all. The killer they are looking for, the drug-crazed hippie, the vengeful business partner, the spurned lover. That killer does not exist. The people who did this are not from our world. They do not operate by its rules. They are from a different reality, a place where a charismatic, failed musician can be a god, where murder can be a holy act, where love can be twisted into a weapon of absolute destruction. They are looking for a human motive, and there is none. As the sun begins to set on this first long day, the house is finally empty of the dead. Our bodies have been taken away to a cold, sterile room where they will be subjected to the final indignity of the autopsy knife. The investigators are packing up their kits, their work for the day done. They leave the house to the silence again, but it is a different kind of silence now. It is a silence filled with questions, with theories, with the beginnings of a legend. The yellow tape flutters in the evening breeze. The house on Cielo Drive is no longer a home. It is a monument. It is a tombstone. And the echo of what happened here is just beginning to resonate. A low, dark hum that will be felt for years, for decades. A permanent, sorrowful note in the symphony of the world. The second night falls, and with it comes a new and deeper layer of stillness. The frenetic energy of the investigation has receded, leaving the house in a state of suspended violation. The rooms are the same, yet irrevocably changed. The air is heavy with the ghosts of what has transpired, a lingering psychic residue that clings to the walls, to the furniture, to the very air itself. This house, which was a symbol of a future I was so excited to build, has become a museum of my past, a static diorama of my final, terrible moments. I am bound to this place. My consciousness, or whatever this strange, untethered awareness is, seems to be anchored to the geography of my own tragedy. I cannot follow my friends to the cold, sterile rooms of the morgue. I cannot follow my children into the bewildered, protective custody of the living. I am trapped here, a silent observer in the ruin of my own life, condemned to watch the story unfold from its bloody epicenter. And then, As the city sleeps a new, more fearful sleep, the unthinkable happens. The horror repeats itself. I cannot see it, but I can feel it, a sympathetic vibration, a new tear in the fabric of the world. Miles away, in another quiet, unsuspecting home, the same darkness that visited this house has found new victims. I can sense the echo of it, the same cold, methodical intent, the same ritualistic rage. The man texts and the women, they are at it again. Another door, another family, another descent into a nightmare from which there is no waking. This new act of violence changes everything. It reframes the narrative that the police and the press have been so carefully constructing. The murder of the people in this house was not about us. It was not about drugs or a deal gone wrong or some secret, sordid part of our lives. We were not the targets. We were simply the symbols. We were the piggies. Our deaths were a means to an end, a bloody message written to a world that the killers despised. This second act of murder is a new signature, a confirmation. The word scrawled on the refrigerator door of this new house, Helter Skelter, is a key, a direct clue to the insane, apocalyptic philosophy that is driving this carnage. The police will not understand it yet. They will see it as a bizarre, meaningless detail, but it is the title page of the entire story. It is the name of the holy war that is being waged against the sleeping city. The next day, the news of the LaBianca murders breaks, and a new, more profound wave of panic grips Los Angeles. This is not a single, isolated event. This is a pattern. A killer, or a group of killers, is moving through the city, striking at random, leaving behind scenes of unspeakable brutality. The fear is no longer confined to the Hollywood Hills. It is everywhere. No one is safe. The city's carefully constructed illusion of order has been shattered. The gates are locked, the security systems are armed, and a deep, collective paranoia settles over the city like the smog. I watch as the investigation into our deaths becomes intertwined with this new, second crime scene. The detectives, who had been so certain of their drug deal theory, are now adrift, their narratives collapsing under the weight of this new, contradictory evidence. They are lost, searching for a human logic in a crime that is utterly inhuman. They are looking for a monster they can understand, and the monster they are hunting is a new species, a creature born from the strange, toxic soil of the late 1960s. The weeks that follow are a slow, frustrating crawl. The police investigation stalls. The trail goes cold. The city holds its breath, waiting for the killers to strike again. But they do not. The perpetrators have vanished, swallowed back into the anonymity from which they came. They are hiding in plain sight, living on a dusty, forgotten movie ranch, listening to the sermons of their mad prophet, savoring the terror they have unleashed. In this strange, timeless state of observation, I see the threads of connection that the living cannot yet see. I see the face of the man who led them, the small man with the wild, burning eyes and the hypnotic voice. I see the lost, searching faces of the young women and men who followed him, who saw in him a father, a lover, a god. I see the hours of indoctrination, the drugs, the sex, the isolation, the relentless psychological manipulation that hollowed them out and remade them into instruments of his will. I see the whole horrifying tapestry of it, the straight, dark line that leads from a prison cell to a hippie commune, from a failed music career to a twisted, apocalyptic prophecy, from a dusty ranch in the valley to this blood-soaked living room on a hill. It is a story of our time, a story of a generation's search for meaning that went horribly, tragically wrong. The police, in their search for clues, are looking at the evidence of the crime. But the crime itself is the evidence. The motive is not hidden in the details. It is screaming from the sheer, nihilistic violence of the act itself. The motive is helter-skelter. The motive is chaos. And so I wait. I watch. I am the silent, unseen ghost of Cielo Drive, a permanent resident of this house of memory. I wait for the living to catch up, for them to piece together the fragments of the story that I now see in its entirety. I wait for them to find the man with the burning eyes and the young, lost children who followed him into the abyss. I wait for justice, for understanding, for some kind of peace. But I know with a cold, sorrowful certainty that for the people who loved me, and for the world that was so horrified by my death, peace will be a long, long time coming. The echo of this night will reverberate for a lifetime. Section 3. The unraveling the passage of time in this state is a strange and abstract concept. There is no day or night, only the ebb and flow of the world's attention on this house, on this story. The initial, frantic energy of the investigation gives way to a long, frustrating, and fallow period. The yellow tape remains, a brittle, sun-bleached perimeter around a place that is now frozen in time. The world moves on, but here, it is always the morning of August 9th, 1969. The police, my would-be avengers, are lost. I watch them chase ghost after ghost, their theories as flimsy and as fleeting as the canyon winds. They are convinced the answer lies within the life I lived, within the world of Hollywood. They comb through my address book, my diaries, my phone records, searching for a secret, a slight, a motive. They are looking for a jilted lover, a jealous rival, a drug dealer I crossed. They are trying to find a villain who fits the narrative of my life as they have chosen to write it. The life of a glamorous, tragic movie star. Every friend of mine, every acquaintance of Roman's, is brought in for questioning. Their own grief compounded by the suspicion of the men in tired suits. They are asked about parties, about drugs, about affairs. Their lives are turned inside out, their private moments exposed to the harsh, unforgiving light of a murder investigation. They are trying to find the monster among us. But the monster was never one of us. The police are so certain of their theory that they are blind to the real clues, the strange, discordant notes that should be screaming at them. They have the word pig on the door. They have the word war carved into Leno LaBianca's flesh. They have the misspelled Helter-Skelter on the refrigerator. These are not the calling cards of a drug deal gone wrong. They are the graffiti of a holy war. They are words from a different lexicon, a different reality. The police see them as bizarre, random acts of a crazed killer, but they are a manifesto. They are the key to the entire kingdom of madness that unleashed this horror, and the police do not have the eyes to see it. I feel a profound, helpless frustration. I am a ghost with the answer, screaming into a void, my voice a silence that no one can hear. I want to shake them to point them in the right direction. Look away from here. I want to tell them, look away from the glamour of Hollywood. Look to the dirt, to the fringes, to the places you ignore. The answer is not in a mansion. It is in a squalid, dusty ranch at the edge of the desert. The answer is not in a movie script. It is in the lyrics of a Beatles song, twisted and mangled into a prophecy of hate. And then, slowly, almost by accident, the first threads of the real story begin to emerge. The unraveling begins not with a brilliant deduction by a seasoned detective, but with the boastful, careless words of a young woman in a jail cell. Susan Atkins, Sadie, the woman with the empty eyes and the knife, is arrested on a completely unrelated charge. She is part of a raid on the Spawn Ranch, rounded up in a sweep of a suspected car theft ring. In a county jail, surrounded by other inmates, her discipline, the cold, cult-like silence she maintained, begins to crack. She needs to feel important. She needs to feel powerful. And so, she begins to talk. She tells her cellmates a story. It is a story of a night of incredible violence, of a mission she was on for the man she loves, the man she calls Charlie. She describes the house on Cielo Drive in perfect, chilling detail. She describes the victims. She describes me. You know, she says, a strange, proud smile on her face. I killed Sharon Tate. I stabbed her to death. She tells them how I pleaded for my baby's life, and she recounts her cold, merciless reply. She is not confessing. She is bragging. She is reliving her moment of absolute power, her graduation into the highest ranks of Charlie's family. Her words are a poison, but they are also a cure. Her cellmates, horrified and fascinated, listen to her story, and one of them, a woman named Virginia Graham, does what no one else has done. She listens, she believes, and she tells the police. The report of this jailhouse confession slowly makes its way through the bureaucratic labyrinth of law enforcement. At first, it is met with skepticism. Atkins is a known drug user, a hippie, an unreliable narrator. Her story seems too fantastic, too insane to be true, but the details she provides, details that were never released to the public, are too specific to ignore. She knows about the rope, about Wycheck's fight for his life on the lawn, about the towel used to write on the door. She knows things that only someone who was there could know. The two separate massive investigations, the one into the Tate murders and the one into the LaBianca murders, are finally, belatedly beginning to connect. The detectives from the two cases compare notes. They see the similarities, the ritualistic overkill, the bloody writing on the walls. And now they have a name, Charlie, and they have a location, Spawn Ranch. The focus of the entire manhunt shifts. The lens pulls back from the glittering world of Beverly Hills and refocuses on the strange, isolated commune in the desert. The investigators begin to piece together the story of this family. They learn about the charismatic leader, Charles Manson, the ex-con who became a guru. They learn about his followers, the lost boys and girls who saw him as a messiah. They learn about his obsession with the Beatles, his bizarre helter-skelter prophecy, and his dream of a coming race war. The strange, discordant clues suddenly snap into place. Pig was not just a random insult. It was a word lifted directly from a Beatles song, a word they were told to write. Helter-skelter was not just a misspelled piece of graffiti. It was the name of their entire belief system. The puzzle pieces, which had seemed so random and disconnected, are now forming a single, coherent, and terrifying picture. The police are no longer hunting for a drug dealer. They are hunting for a prophet and his disciples. They are hunting for a family. And the face of that family, the face of the man who sent them, is about to become the new face of evil in America. The unraveling has begun, and it is leading them down a rabbit hole far deeper and darker than they could have ever imagined. The name Manson hangs in the air of the investigation like smoke. It is a name that connects the previously unconnected dots, a key that unlocks a new, terrifying understanding of the crime. The police, who had been chasing ghosts in the Hollywood Hills, now have a solid, tangible target. The investigation transforms from a baffled search for a motive into a focused, methodical process of building a case against a cult. I watch as the machinery of justice, so slow and clumsy at first, now begins to grind with a new and powerful efficiency. The story of the family is pieced together, bit by painstaking bit, from the testimony of frightened ex-members, from the evidence gathered at the Spawn Ranch raids, and from the growing web of confessions and betrayals within the group itself. The central figure, the man whose face now stares out from the front page of every newspaper, is a revelation to the world. Charles Manson. He is not the monster anyone expected. He is small, almost elfin, with a wild, messianic look in his eyes. He is not a physical giant, but his power is immense. He is a black hole of charisma, a man who can bend others to his will through a strange, potent mixture of love and fear. He is the puppeteer, the man who stayed behind while his children went out to do his bloody work. The world sees a madman, but I see him with the terrible clarity of the dead. I see the years of abuse and neglect that forged him. I see the long, lonely nights in prison cells where he honed his skills of manipulation and his contempt for the world. I see the brilliant, twisted mind that took the hopeful, searching energy of an entire generation and warped it into a weapon of nihilistic destruction. He is not just a monster. He is a mirror, a dark reflection of the society that created him and then threw him away. The key to the prosecution's case, the thread that will tie him directly to the murders, is Linda Kasabian. She was there both nights. She was the driver, the lookout, the one who did not kill. She fled the family shortly after the murders, her conscience shattered by the horror she had witnessed. Now, she becomes the state's star witness. She is granted immunity in exchange for her testimony, a deal that is seen as a necessary evil to get to the man at the top. I watch her as she prepares to testify. I see her fear, her guilt, her profound, soul-deep sorrow. She is a ghost, too, in her own way, haunted by the memory of what she was a part of. She is one of the children, one of the lost girls who came to Charlie looking for love and found a kind of damnation instead. But unlike the others, a small, resilient spark of her former self remained, a spark of conscience that allowed her to finally break free. Her testimony will be an act of profound courage, a journey back into the heart of the darkness to shine a light on the man who dwells there. The other killers are paraded before the public, and they are a horrifying spectacle. Tex Watson, the clean-cut boy from Texas, the one they called the All-American Kid, is revealed to be the brutal, merciless butcher who led the charge both nights. And the girls, Sadie, Katie, Leslie, they are a sight that America cannot comprehend. They are not haggard, wild-eyed monsters. They are young, pretty middle-class girls who giggle for the cameras, who sing songs on their way into the courthouse, and who show absolutely no remorse for the lives they have taken. They are still under his spell. Even in jail, even facing a death sentence, their devotion to Charlie is absolute. They shave their heads in solidarity with him. They carve X's into their foreheads, a mark of their allegiance to their Messiah. They are the living embodiment of his power, a terrifying testament to his ability to erase a person's identity and replace it with his own. They look at the world with a kind of serene, beatific contempt. They believe they have done nothing wrong. They believe they were soldiers in a holy war, and that their victims, that we were merely pigs who deserved to die. Watching them, these girls who took my life and the life of my son, I feel a strange and unexpected emotion. It is not just anger. It is a kind of profound, bottomless pity. I see the young, searching girls they once were, the girls who came to California with flowers in their hair, looking for a better world. I see how he found the cracks in their souls, the insecurities, the loneliness, and how he filled those cracks with his own poison. He did not just murder us, he murdered them too. He took their humanity, their conscience, their very souls, and replaced them with a hollow, smiling obedience. They are his greatest victims, the living dead who still walk and talk and sing his praises. The world is trying to understand them, to find a psychological label that can explain their transformation. They talk about brainwashing, about LSD, about the power of cults. But these are just words, attempts by the rational world to put a frame around an irrational horror. The truth is simpler and more terrifying. The truth is that they loved him, and he, in his own twisted, parasitic way, loved the power they gave him. It was a perfect, closed circuit of need and devotion that spiraled into a shared psychosis. The trial begins, and it is a circus. The family members who were not charged hold a vigil outside the courthouse. Their ex is a silent, menacing presence. Inside, the defendants disrupt the proceedings, shouting, laughing, turning their backs on the judge. They are performing for an audience of one. The man sitting at the defense table, the man who still controls them with a single subtle glance. The world watches, fascinated and repulsed. The story of our deaths is now secondary to the story of their lives, their strange, perverse family. We, the victims, have become the catalyst, the backdrop for a larger, more sensational drama. The unraveling of the crime is also the unraveling of a certain kind of American innocence. The idea that the age of Aquarius was a time of peace and love is dying a slow public death in that courtroom. It is being replaced by a new, more fearful understanding of the darkness that can hide behind a smiling face, behind the promise of a utopian dream. And the man with the swastika carved into his forehead is its new and eternal high priest. The courtroom becomes the new stage, and the trial is the final grand performance. The prosecutor, a man named Vincent Bugliosi, becomes the reluctant protagonist in this drama. He is a man of logic, of facts, of evidence, and he is tasked with the almost impossible job of explaining an irrational act to a rational world. His entire case hinges on his ability to make a jury of ordinary citizens believe in a story that sounds like a fever dream. A story of a pop group from Liverpool, an apocalyptic race war, and a messianic ex-con who believed he was the fifth angel of the apocalypse. I watch him as he meticulously builds his case. He is a craftsman, laying brick upon brick of evidence. He has the fingerprints, the weapons, the eyewitness accounts, but he knows that is not enough. To convict Manson, who never physically touched any of us, he has to prove motive. He has to prove that Manson's words, his philosophy, his prophecies, were the direct cause of our deaths. He has to prosecute a state of mind. The star of his case is Linda Kasabian. When she takes the stand, the entire courtroom holds its breath. She is the ghost from the night of the murders, the one who can speak for the dead. Her testimony is a journey into the heart of the family's darkness. She speaks in a soft, halting voice, her eyes filled with a permanent, haunted sadness. She describes the nights of August 8th and 9th in excruciating, vivid detail. She recounts the drive up to Cielo Drive, the cutting of the phone lines, the murder of the young boy, Stephen Parent, at the gate. She describes the screams from inside the house, screams that she says will follow her for the rest of her life. She tells the story of the second night, of driving through the city with Charlie at the wheel, of him searching for victims, of him entering the LaBianca house alone. Her testimony is the direct, unbreakable link. She places the puppet master at the scene, giving the orders, orchestrating the terror. The defense attorneys try to destroy her on the stand. They paint her as a liar, a drug addict, a woman who is testifying to save her own skin. They attack her character, her memory, her motives, but her testimony holds. It has the simple, unshakable power of the truth. She is not performing. She is confessing, not just to the court, but to the world, to the ghosts that haunt her. Her words are an act of profound and painful atonement. Then comes the testimony that explains the why. Bugliosi calls a series of former family members to the stand, men and women who have broken free from Manson's spell. They describe the nights around the campfire at Spawn Ranch. They tell the story of Helter Skelter. They explain how Charlie would sit with the Beatles' White Album, playing it over and over, interpreting the lyrics as a coded prophecy. Piggies, Blackbird, Helter Skelter. These were not just songs to him. They were scripture. They were messages from the divine, from the soul of the universe. And he was their chosen interpreter. The jury listens, their faces a mixture of fascination and disbelief. It is a story so bizarre, so completely divorced from their own reality, that it is almost impossible to accept. And yet, it is the only story that fits the facts. It is the only explanation for the ritualistic nature of the crimes, for the bloody writing on the walls, for the utter lack of a conventional motive. Bugliosi is slowly, carefully, pulling them down the rabbit hole with him, forcing them to look at the world through the warped, paranoid lens of the Manson family. The defendants themselves are a constant, disruptive presence in the courtroom. They are not fighting for their lives. They are putting on a show. They are performing for Charlie. They giggle, they interrupt, they sing. One day, they turn their backs on the judge in a coordinated act of defiance. Another day, during a witness's testimony, Leslie Van Houten suddenly lunges at the judge with a pencil. It is a calculated chaos, designed to undermine the authority of the court, to prove that they are still beyond the reach of its laws. And Manson, the still center of the storm, watches it all with a detached, knowing smile. He knows this is his stage. He is no longer an unknown ex-con. He is the most famous man in America. He has achieved the fame he always craved, not through his music, but through the blood of others. He sees the cameras, he sees the headlines, and he knows he has won. He has become a symbol, a myth, a dark prophet for a disillusioned age. The most dramatic moment of the trial comes when he finally demands to speak. With the jury out of the room, he delivers a long, rambling, and hypnotic sermon to the judge and the gallery. He speaks of his life, of his philosophy, of the hypocrisy of the society that condemns him. "I am your brother," he says, his voice a strange, sing-song cadence. "You made your children what they are. These children that come at you with knives, they are your children." It is a chilling, powerful performance. He is not defending himself. He is indicting the world. He is turning the trial on its head, casting himself as the victim, the scapegoat for a society that is afraid to look at its own darkness. In that moment, I understand the true nature of his power. It is the power of the void. He has no center, no soul of his own. He is a perfect mirror, reflecting back the fears, the desires, and the secret darkness of those who look at him. To his followers, he reflected their desire for love and acceptance. To the world, he reflects its fear of chaos, of madness, of the breakdown of all order. He is a hole in the fabric of reality, and the trial is a desperate attempt by the world to stitch that hole closed. But they cannot. The damage is done. The unraveling is complete. The world now knows his name, and the fear he has unleashed will never be fully contained again. The trial grinds on, a 9-month marathon of psychological warfare and legal maneuvering. The weight of the evidence, combined with the powerful, coherent narrative built by the prosecution, becomes insurmountable. The defendants' courtroom antics, which were intended to showcase their contempt for the system, only serve to alienate the jury and confirm their lack of remorse. They are so deeply enmeshed in their own reality, so loyal to their leader, that they are incapable of seeing how their own actions are sealing their fate. The closing arguments are a final, dramatic summation of the two opposing worldviews that have clashed in this courtroom. The defense attorneys, faced with an impossible task, do their best to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They argue that the state's witnesses, particularly Linda Kasabian, are unreliable drug users who are testifying to save themselves. They portray the helter-skelter motive as a work of fiction, a bizarre fantasy concocted by the prosecutor to explain a series of crimes that have no rational explanation. They paint Manson not as a mastermind, but as a harmless, eccentric musician, a scapegoat for a police force that was desperate to close its highest-profile case. Then, Vincent Bugliosi rises to deliver his closing argument. It is a masterpiece of prosecutorial logic, a final, damning tapestry woven from the thousands of threads of evidence he has presented over the preceding months. He walks the jury back through the entire story, from the formation of the family to the nights of the murders. He lays out the helter-skelter motive not as a fantasy, but as a clear, detailed, and horrifyingly logical battle plan. He plays the Beatles' songs in the courtroom, showing how Manson twisted their innocent lyrics into a personal prophecy of murder. He reminds the jury of the victims. He shows them the crime scene photos, the images of the blood-soaked rooms, the pictures of our bodies. He speaks our names. He speaks of my unborn son. He forces the jury to look away from the bizarre, charismatic theater of the defendants and to confront the brutal human reality of what was done. These are not just statistics, he tells them. These were living, breathing human beings who had a right to live. He points to the defendants, to Manson, to the 3 smiling women at the table, and he names them for what they are. Not lost children, not misguided hippies, but remorseless, cold-blooded killers. His final words are a plea for justice, a demand that the jury hold not just the hands that held the knives, but the mind that guided them accountable. He looks at Charles Manson and declares that he is the one, the central driving force, who is uniquely responsible for all the death and all the terror. The case goes to the jury. The city, the nation, the world holds its breath. The deliberation is long, but the outcome feels inevitable. The evidence is too strong, the crimes too heinous, the defendants too unapologetically defiant. The verdict comes on January 25, 1971. The courtroom is silent, the air thick with tension. One by one, the verdicts are read. Guilty. Guilty on all counts. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. A wave of quiet, somber relief washes through the courtroom. It is not a moment of celebration, but of profound, exhausted catharsis. The unraveling has led to a conclusion. The system, for all its flaws and its initial fumbling, has worked. The monsters have been named, and they have been judged. The penalty phase follows, and the outcome is just as certain. The jury recommends the death penalty for all 4 defendants. They are sentenced to die in the gas chamber at San Quentin. The sentence, however, will never be carried out. In a twist of fate that seems to be the final, surreal chapter of this entire saga, the California Supreme Court abolishes the death penalty in 1972. Just a year after the trial, their sentences are automatically commuted to life in prison. They will not be executed. They will simply grow old behind bars, living reminders of the horror they unleashed, permanent residents of the system their leader so despised. And so the legal story ends. The trials are over, the verdicts rendered, the sentences passed. The world has its answers. It has a narrative, a story it can tell itself about what happened. It is the story of a charismatic cult leader and his brainwashed followers. A story of a bizarre, apocalyptic motive. A story of a time of social upheaval that produced a new and terrifying kind of monster. But from my vantage point, from this silent, timeless space, I see that the story is not over. The unraveling of the crime is one thing. The unraveling of the grief, of the fear, of the legacy of this night. That is a process that will never truly end. The house on Cielo Drive will be torn down, its physical presence erased from the landscape, as if the memory of what happened here is too painful for the earth itself to hold. But the story will live on. It will become a legend, a piece of dark American folklore. The name Manson will become a synonym for evil, a cultural shorthand for the darkest parts of the human soul. The girls, in their prison cells, will slowly, over decades, begin to emerge from the fog of his influence. They will express remorse. They will weep for the lives they took. They will become old women, haunted by the ghosts of the young girls they once were. They will be denied parole again and again, their crimes too great for forgiveness. And Charlie will remain Charlie. In his prison cell, he will become an icon, a dark celebrity who receives fan mail and marriage proposals. He will grant interviews, his eyes still burning with a mad, prophetic fire, his words still a tangled, hypnotic web of nonsense and truth. He will never show remorse. He will never accept guilt. He will remain, until his last breath, the messiah of his own twisted religion. The unraveling is over. But the echo of this story, the echo of the screams in this house, the echo of the fear that gripped a city, that will go on forever. It is a story that has now been permanently woven into the fabric of the culture. A dark, cautionary tale that will be told and retold. A permanent reminder of a time when the flowers wilted, the love turned to hate, and the summer of peace and understanding ended in a long, dark night of blood and fire. Section 4. The legend, the end of the trial, is not an end at all. It is a transformation. The raw, brutal facts of my death, of our deaths, are now being spun into something else. They are becoming a story, a commodity, a piece of public property to be bought, sold, and endlessly consumed. The legal system has rendered its verdict, but now the court of public opinion convenes, and its session is eternal. I watch as the machine of myth-making kicks into high gear. Books are written, their covers adorned with the wild, staring eyes of the man who ordered my death. His face, not mine, becomes the emblem of the tragedy. He is the star of the show. The authors, the journalists, the filmmakers, they are all prospectors, mining the rich, dark vein of this story for fame and for profit. They interview the killers, they analyze the prophecies, they dissect the family dynamic. They are trying to explain the why. But in doing so, they are turning a human tragedy into a piece of intellectual property. The story they tell is a compelling one. It is the story of the swinging 60s, of a generation's naive idealism crashing headlong into a wall of nihilistic violence. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of drugs, of free love, of abandoning traditional values. Our deaths become a morality play, a final, bloody punctuation mark on a decade of excess. We are no longer just victims. We are symbols, sacrificial lambs slaughtered on the altar of a failed cultural revolution. This narrative is comforting to the mainstream world, to the straight society that the family so despised. It allows them to place the horror at a safe distance, to categorize it as a bizarre generational anomaly. This is what happens. The story implicitly warns. When you stray too far from the path, they use our deaths to validate their own worldview, to reinforce the boundaries between their world of order and the world of chaos from which the killers emerged. And in this story, I too am transformed into a symbol. I am no longer a person. I am Sharon Tate, the beautiful, pregnant movie star. My life is reduced to a set of adjectives, a tragic, glamorous archetype. My career, which was just beginning, is now defined by its unfulfilled promise. My marriage to Roman, a complex and deeply personal relationship, is flattened into a fairy tale of Hollywood royalty. its tragic ending all the more poignant because of its glamorous beginning. My pregnancy, the most profound and personal experience of my life, becomes a key plot point, a detail used to heighten the pathos and the horror of the story. The baby, my son, becomes the ultimate symbol of lost innocence, a life that was never lived, a ghost that will forever haunt the narrative. I watch as my image is endlessly reproduced, the same photographs appearing again and again. The beautiful, smiling girl with the flowers in her hair, the glamorous actress on the red carpet. These images become a kind of shorthand for the tragedy, a visual representation of the before that makes the after all the more shocking. They are turning me into a saint, a perfect, flawless victim whose purity makes the crime all the more profane. But this sainthood is a kind of erasure. It smooths over the complexities, the contradictions, the simple, ordinary humanity of who I was. I was not a saint. I was a person. I was a woman who loved, who laughed, who had fears and flaws and dreams. I was a daughter, a sister, a wife. I was about to become a mother. These simple, human truths are lost in the glare of the legend. The legend requires a perfect victim, and so I am made perfect in death. The house on Cielo Drive becomes a landmark on the dark map of American crime, a stop on the gypskers' morbid tourism. Cars slow down as they pass by, their occupants staring at the gate, at the windows, trying to catch a glimpse of the ghost, to feel a vicarious thrill from the proximity to a famous horror. The house itself is tainted, a place that can never be cleansed of the memory of what happened here. It will be sold, resold, and eventually torn down, its physical presence erased, but its psychic stain is permanent. It will always be the Manson house. The killers in their prison cells also become legends. They are not just convicted felons. They are cultural icons, symbols of ultimate rebellion. Manson, in particular, achieves the rock star status he always craved. He becomes a t-shirt, a poster, a recurring character in the nation's nightmares. He receives fan mail from a new generation of disaffected youths who see in his nihilistic rage a reflection of their own. They do not see the pathetic, manipulative con man. They see the prophet, the outlaw, the man who dared to declare war on the system. He has become a brand, his swastika-carved forehead a registered trademark of evil. This is perhaps the cruelest irony of all. The man who ordered my death, who destroyed my family and the lives of my friends, has achieved a kind of immortality through his crimes. His name will be remembered long after the names of his victims have faded. He has become the central character in the story of our deaths. We are just the supporting cast, the tragic figures whose brutal end was necessary to set his legend in motion. The world, in its endless fascination with the darkness, has given him the one thing he always wanted: a permanent place on the stage. And from my silent, unseen vantage point, I am forced to watch the performance, a ghost in the audience of my own tragedy, as the story of my life is rewritten, revised, and sold to a world that will never truly understand it. The creation of the legend is not a passive process. It is an active construction, built piece by the storytellers of the age. The most powerful of these is the prosecutor himself, Vincent Bugliosi. His book, Helter Skelter, becomes the definitive text, the authorized scripture of the Manson mythos. It is a masterpiece of true crime writing, a meticulous and compelling account of the investigation and the trial. It transforms the chaotic, often senseless, details of the case into a coherent, gripping narrative. It gives the world the story it craves, a clear-cut battle between good and evil, a brilliant prosecutor hunting down a demonic cult leader. I watch as Bugliosi's version of events becomes the official version. His book is a bestseller, a cultural phenomenon. It is read by millions, its narrative absorbed into the collective consciousness. He becomes the hero of the story, the man who stared into the abyss and did not flinch, who brought order to the chaos. His interpretation of the helter-skelter motive becomes the unshakable truth, the single, elegant explanation for a crime that was, in reality, a far messier and more complex tapestry of madness, manipulation, and pathetic human need. The book is brilliant, but it is also a cage. It traps the story, and all of us within it, in a single, powerful narrative. It solidifies the roles we are all to play for eternity. Manson is the evil genius. The family are his robotic, brainwashed slaves. Bugliosi is the knight in shining armor. And we, the victims, are the tragic, beautiful symbols of lost innocence. The story is neat, it is compelling, and it is a simplification. It leaves no room for the contradictions, for the ambiguities, for the messy, inconvenient truths that do not fit the clean lines of its narrative. For example, the book solidifies the idea that the family was a well-oiled killing machine, a disciplined army of true believers. But from my vantage point, I saw the truth. I saw the fear in their eyes, the panicked, clumsy chaos of their actions. They were not disciplined soldiers. They were terrified, confused children, high on drugs and their own adrenaline, trying desperately to follow the insane orders of a man they were more afraid of than the law. Their violence was not the cold precision of an assassin. It was the sloppy, hysterical work of amateurs who were in over their heads. The book also cements the legend of Manson as a charismatic mastermind of almost supernatural power. It portrays him as a brilliant, satanic figure who could bend anyone to his will. The reality I see is both more pathetic and more terrifying. His power was not supernatural. It was the power of a predator who was preternaturally skilled at finding the weaknesses in others. He did not seek out the strong. He sought out the broken, the lonely, the insecure. He was a master at becoming whatever his followers needed him to be. A father to the fatherless, a lover to the unloved, a savior to the lost. He did not brainwash them. He simply filled the empty spaces inside them with his own darkness. He was a parasite who fed on the emotional needs of others, and the legend of the all-powerful guru obscures this simpler, more predatory truth. And then there is the legend of this house. 10050 Cielo Drive. The address becomes a piece of dark trivia, a location that will forever be associated with this night. It becomes a character in the story, the murder house, a place of almost supernatural evil. The truth is that it was just a house. A beautiful house, a house I loved, but just a collection of wood, stone, and glass. It had no power, no evil intent. The evil was not in the house. It was brought into it. But the legend requires a haunted house, a place where the geography itself is cursed, and so my home is transformed into a Gothic stage set. The legend also requires a motive that is grand, epic, and almost biblical in its scope. Helter Skelter provides this. The idea of a race war, of an apocalyptic battle between good and evil, gives the murders a kind of terrible, mythic weight. It elevates a series of squalid, brutal killings into a world historical event. The truth I see is that Helter Skelter was a justification, not a cause. It was a grand, theatrical narrative that Manson created to give his own pathetic, homicidal rage a sense of cosmic significance. He didn't want to start a race war. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to punish the world that had rejected him, the world of the piggies who had the success, the fame, the recording contracts that he so desperately craved. Our murders were not the first act of a revolution. They were the ultimate act of a bitter, narcissistic rage fit. But the legend of Helter Skelter is a better story, and so it is the story that is told. I watch as these legends take root and grow, becoming more real than the reality they are based on. The story is no longer about us, the people who lived and died here. It is about the symbols we have become, and I realize that this is a second kind of death. The first was the death of the body, a swift, brutal, and final event. This second death is the death of the self, a slow, ongoing process of being replaced by a fictional character who bears my name. It is the death of my own story, which has been hijacked and rewritten by others to serve their own needs. The need for a good story, the need for a simple explanation, the need for a clear line between good and evil. The world needs the legend of the Manson murders to make sense of the darkness. And to create that legend, they have to sacrifice the truth. The legend, once established, begins to feed on itself. It attracts a new kind of participant, a new cast of characters who were not there on the night of the murders, but who now seek to attach themselves to its dark, magnetic energy. These are the acolytes of the myth, the people who are drawn to the flame not for warmth, but for the sheer, destructive thrill of it. From my silent perch, I watch them come. They are the conspiracy theorists, the revisionist historians, the amateur detectives who spend their lives sifting through the ashes of this tragedy, looking for a new angle, a hidden truth. They are not satisfied with the official story, with the helter-skelter narrative that has been so neatly packaged for public consumption. They believe there is a deeper, more sinister secret to be uncovered. They spin elaborate, intricate webs of theory. They argue that this was not a cult killing, but a professional hit, a drug deal gone wrong on a massive scale. They pore over the autopsy reports, the police files, the witness testimonies, searching for the single, overlooked clue that will blow the case wide open. They connect us to organized crime, to shadowy government agencies, to other unsolved murders. They are trying to create a new narrative, one in which they are the heroes, the brilliant sleuths who have finally solved the unsolvable crime. In their world, we, the victims, are once again recast. We are no longer innocent symbols. We are active participants in our own demise. We are drug traffickers, we are secret informants, we are decadent partygoers who got mixed up with the wrong people. They invent secret lives for us. Lives filled with the kind of dark, conspiratorial intrigue that their theories require. They take the messy human reality of our lives and twist it to fit their narrative. My friendship with Jay is not a friendship. It is a torrid affair. Wycheck and Abigail are not just friends staying at the house. They are major players in an international drug ring. Every detail of our lives is re-examined, reinterpreted, and given a new, sinister meaning. This is a new kind of violation. The first was the violation of the body. This is the violation of the memory, the desecration of the truth of who we were. It is a strange, posthumous character assassination, a process by which our own lives are used as evidence to support a fantasy that has nothing to do with us. I want to tell them that the truth is not more complicated than the official story. It is, in many ways, more simple, more random, and more terrifyingly banal. The truth is that we were in the wrong house on the wrong night. We were chosen not because of who we were, but because of what we represented. There is no deeper conspiracy. There is only the madness of a single, failed man and the lost children who followed him. But the conspiracy is a better story. It is more exciting, more complex, more satisfying. And so, the legend of the real story behind the Tate murders begins to grow, a parasitic vine, wrapping itself around the trunk of the original myth. And then there are the others, the ones who are not drawn to the mystery, but to the darkness itself. They are the ones who see Manson not as a criminal to be solved, but as a prophet to be emulated. They write him letters in prison. They start websites dedicated to his philosophy. They see in his rage a validation of their own, in his nihilism a kind of freedom. They are the new family, the next generation of lost souls who are drawn to his particular brand of charismatic poison. They see the murders not as a tragedy, but as a work of art, a revolutionary act. They celebrate the killers. They fetishize the violence. They turn the crime scene photos into icons. They are the children of the legend, the ones who have consumed the myth so completely that they have lost the ability to distinguish it from reality. They are a testament to the enduring, dangerous power of this story, a story that continues to attract the broken and the lost, just as the man himself once did. I watch all of this with a kind of profound, sorrowful detachment. The story has taken on a life of its own now. It no longer belongs to me or to Jay or to Abigail or to Wycheck or to Stephen. It belongs to the world. It is a piece of public folklore, a story that is endlessly retold, reinterpreted, and reinvented to fit the needs of each new generation of storytellers. The legend has become a self-perpetuating machine. The books feed the documentaries, which feed the movies, which feed the conspiracy theories, which feed the new generation of acolytes. It is a closed loop, a snake eating its own tail. And at the center of it all is the still, unblinking eye of the man in the prison cell, the man who started it all. He watches his own legend grow, and he smiles. This is his true victory. He did not start a race war. He did not take over the world. But he did create a story so powerful and so dark that it will outlive him. He has achieved a kind of immortality, not through his art, but through his evil. And what of us? What of the 5 people who died in this house? We are the foundation upon which this entire, towering edifice of legend has been built. We are the silent, unseen ghosts who haunt the narrative, our real lives and real selves long since erased, replaced by the simplified, symbolic characters that the story requires. The world remembers the name of the killer, but it is slowly forgetting the names of the killed. We are becoming the footnotes in his story. The legend is not about us anymore. It is about him. And that, I realize, is the final and most profound murder of all. The cruelest part of the legend is the way it eclipses the grief. The raw human pain of the families left behind becomes a footnote, a brief, emotional interlude in the larger, more exciting story of the cult and its crimes. My mother, my father, my sisters. Their private, lifelong agony is rendered invisible by the public's endless fascination with the monsters who caused it. I feel their grief as a constant, sorrowful hum, a baseline of pain that will never cease. I watch my mother, a woman of incredible strength and grace, transform her own unimaginable loss into a crusade. She becomes a new kind of witness, a voice for the victims. She attends every parole hearing for the killers year after year, decade after decade. Her presence in those hearing rooms is a powerful, silent rebuke to the legend. She is there to remind the world not of the mythic satanic killers, but of the real human beings they destroyed. She is there to speak my name, to speak my son's name, to ensure that we are not forgotten, that we are not just characters in their story. She sits just a few feet away from them, from the women who held the knives, from the men who stood by and watched. She looks at them, these aging, gray-haired prisoners, and she sees not the terrifying, smiling Manson girls from the newsreels, but the pathetic, broken remnants of a destructive cult. She listens to their apologies, their pleas for forgiveness, their carefully rehearsed expressions of remorse, and she does not grant them the solace they seek. Her grief is a fortress, and her memory is a weapon. She is there to ensure that the parole board and the world never forgets the true cost of their revolutionary act. Her fight is a lonely one. The world, for the most part, moves on. The legend is more interesting than the long, slow, grinding work of remembrance. The parole hearings become a brief, recurring news item, a chance to show a new, updated mugshot of the killers, to rehash the familiar, sensational details of the case. The focus is always on them, on their potential for release, on their psychological state. The victims are mentioned, of course, but as a kind of necessary prelude to the more interesting story of the perpetrators. I watch as Roman tries to navigate the impossible landscape of his own grief. The world expects him to play a role, the role of the tragic, grieving widower. But his pain is too raw, too complex for such a simple character. He is consumed by a rage and a sorrow so profound that it threatens to destroy him. He flees the country, he flees this house, he flees the memory of the life we had planned. He immerses himself in his work, trying to find in the controlled, artificial world of filmmaking a solace he cannot find in the real world. But the legend follows him. He is forever tied to this story, to me, to the horror of this night. Every interview he gives, every film he makes, is viewed through the lens of this tragedy. He becomes a character in the story, too, the dark, haunted artist whose life was irrevocably shaped by a single violent act. The world is fascinated by his pain, but it is a shallow, voyeuristic fascination. They do not see the man. They see the tragic figure. They do not understand the depth of his loss, the loss of not just a wife, but a son, a future, a home. And then there are the other families, the Sebrings, the Folgers, the Frykowskis, the parents. Their private grief is also subsumed by the public narrative. They are the other victims, their names and faces often a footnote to the more famous, more glamorous story of the pregnant movie star. Their loved ones are reduced to supporting roles in the tragedy, their individual lives and stories erased by the overwhelming gravity of the central myth. Their loss is no less profound, their pain no less absolute, but the legend has a hierarchy, and they are not at the top. This, I realize, is the enduring power and the profound cruelty of a crime that becomes a legend. It creates its own gravitational field, pulling everything and everyone into its orbit. It flattens complexity, it erases individuality, and it transforms real human beings into one-dimensional symbols. The killers become mythic monsters. The victims become tragic saints. The families become grieving shadows. And the truth, the messy, complicated, and deeply personal truth of what was lost, is smoothed over, polished, and packaged for easy consumption. The legend is a story that is told for the benefit of the living. It provides a sense of order, a narrative framework that helps them to process an act of incomprehensible chaos. It provides villains to hate and heroes to admire. It provides lessons to be learned and morals to be drawn. But it is a story that comes at a great cost. And the cost is the memory of who we really were. From this silent, timeless place, I watch as the legend of my death takes on a life of its own. A life far more powerful and enduring than my own brief 26 years. I have become public property, a ghost who haunts not just this house, but the collective imagination of the world. The story is no longer mine. It belongs to everyone, and in that belonging I am lost. The ultimate victory of the man with the staring eyes was not that he ordered my death, but that he succeeded in authoring the story of it, a story that will be told long after the last person who truly knew me and truly loved me is gone from the earth. Section 5. The silence, the years fall away like dust. The world outside the windows of this house, this memory, continues its frantic, forward motion. But in here, there is only a vast, unchanging silence. The yellow police tape is long gone. The forensic powders have been swept away. The house itself has been exorcised from the landscape, torn down and replaced, its physical ghost banished in a desperate attempt to erase the stain. But the silence remains. It is a silence that has soaked into the very soil of this hillside. The legend, which once raged like a wildfire, has now settled into the slow, steady glow of established history. The books have been written, the films have been made, the documentaries have been produced. The story has been told, its narrative arcs polished, its characters solidified into their permanent, iconic roles. The shock has faded, replaced by a kind of grim, historical familiarity. My name, and the name of the man who orchestrated my end, are now inextricably linked, two sides of the same dark, historical coin. From this place of absolute stillness, I have watched the world grapple with the meaning of our deaths. I have watched them turn us into symbols, into cautionary tales, into cultural touchstones. I have seen our tragedy used to justify political agendas, to sell books, to fuel 1,000 late-night arguments about the nature of good and evil. The story has been a mirror, reflecting back the fears and the fascinations of each new era. But now, as the decades pass, a new kind of quiet is settling in. The principal actors in the drama are beginning to leave the stage. The parole hearings, which were once front-page news, are now a quiet, procedural ritual. The killers, who were once the terrifying, youthful faces of a new kind of evil, are now old, gray, and tired. Their bodies are beginning to fail them. Susan Atkins, the woman with the dead eyes, the one who held the knife, is the first to go, taken not by a Vengiator's blade, but by a brain tumor, her end a slow, quiet fade in a prison hospital bed. And then he dies. The man himself, Charles Manson, the dark sun around which this entire galaxy of pain has revolved, finally burns out. His death at the age of 83 is not a dramatic, violent end, but a quiet, clinical one. A simple failure of the body in a hospital bed, surrounded not by adoring followers, but by prison guards. The news of his death creates a final, fleeting ripple of interest in the old story. His face is on the news again, the same wild-eyed photograph, a final, ghostly encore. But the world has changed. There are new monsters now, new fears, new tragedies. His death is a historical footnote, the closing of a chapter that most of the world had already finished reading. His death brings no sense of victory, no feeling of justice. It is just an ending. The black hole of charisma that warped so many lives has finally collapsed in on itself. His passing does not erase the pain he caused, nor does it silence the echoes of his madness. It simply removes the living, breathing center of the legend, leaving behind only the myth, a story that will now continue on without its author. I also watch the departure of those who fought to keep our memory alive. My mother, after a lifetime spent as a warrior for victims' rights, a constant, unwavering presence at every parole hearing, finally succumbs to her own battle with illness. Her death is a quiet, profound loss. She was the keeper of the flame, the one who refused to let the world forget the human cost of the legend. With her passing, a powerful voice for the victims is silenced. The world is a little quieter now, the memory of who we were a little more fragile. Roman continues his work, his art a testament to a life of profound resilience. He finds a new love, a new family. He builds a new life on the foundations of the old one. But the ghost of this house, the ghost of me, the ghost of our son, is a permanent resident in the architecture of his soul. He rarely speaks of it now, the pain too deep, too private to be shared with a world that has turned it into a public spectacle. He carries his grief with a quiet, dignified silence, a silence that is, in its own way, louder than any scream. The world is slowly forgetting the people and remembering only the story. The edges of the reality are softening, blurring into the clean, simple lines of the myth. The raw, visceral horror of the event is being replaced by a kind of detached, historical curiosity. We are becoming characters in a history book, names and dates to be memorized by students who were not yet born when the blood was still wet on this floor. In this vast, eternal silence, my own perspective begins to shift. The intense, personal agony of my own end, the raw, visceral terror of those final moments, has faded. It is not that it is forgotten. It is simply that it has been absorbed into a larger, more sorrowful understanding. The anger I felt, the helpless rage at the injustice and the senselessness of it all, has given way to a kind of profound, cosmic sadness. I see the killers not as monsters, but as what they truly were, broken children. I see the long, crooked path that led them to my door. I see the neglect, the abuse, the loneliness, the desperate, aching need for love and belonging that made them so vulnerable to the man who promised them a family. I see them at Spawn Ranch, their minds clouded by drugs, their souls hollowed out by his relentless indoctrination, and I feel a pang of pity for the people they might have been, the lives they might have lived, if they had never crossed his path. He did not just take our lives, he took theirs too. He stole their youth, their innocence, their humanity, and replaced it with a twisted, borrowed identity that was not their own. They were his first victims. The knives they held were just an extension of his will. The horror they unleashed was a projection of his own internal, festering wounds. To see this is not to forgive them. Forgiveness is a concept for the living, a transaction of the soul that is beyond my reach. It is simply to understand, to see the entire tragic mechanism of the crime, from its earliest, psychological origins to its bloody, final conclusion, and I see myself and the life I lived with a new clarity. The legend that the world created for me, the legend of the beautiful, tragic movie star, begins to feel thin and transparent. It is a costume, a role, and I can now see the person who was wearing it. I see a young woman, full of flaws and insecurities, full of hopes and dreams that were both ordinary and extraordinary. I see my love for my work, the simple joy of being on a set, of creating a character, of being a part of a collaborative act of storytelling. I see the films not as milestones in a glamorous career, but as snapshots of a life, of a time of learning, of growing, of finding my own voice. I see the frustrating auditions, the disappointing roles, the moments of self-doubt. The legend erases the struggle. It remembers only the success. But the struggle was part of the story, too. It was the part that made it real. I see my love for Roman, not as the fairy tale the world imagined, but as the complex, challenging, and deeply passionate reality it was. I see our arguments, our misunderstandings, our moments of distance, and I see our profound connection, the shared language of art and ambition, the deep, abiding love that was the bedrock of our life together. The legend requires a perfect love story to make the tragedy more poignant, but our love was more interesting, more real, because it was not perfect. And most clearly of all, I see my love for my son. The 9 months of his silent, secret life inside me were the most profound and transformative of my own. In this timeless silence, I can feel the memory of his presence, the gentle kicks, the slow, rhythmic turning. It is the one part of my experience that the legend cannot touch, cannot simplify, cannot sell. It is a secret conversation that belongs only to me, a love story that was complete before it even had a chance to begin. The world mourns the loss of the unborn baby, the symbol of lost innocence. But I mourn my son. He had a name. He had a future. He was real. To see all of this with such clarity is to understand the true nature of the tragedy. The tragedy was not that a movie star was killed. The tragedy was that a daughter, a sister, a wife, a friend, a mother-to-be was erased, and in her place, a legend was born, a story that, for all its drama and all its horror, could never capture the simple, beautiful, and irreplaceable truth of a life that was lived. The silence of this place is no longer a silence of horror. It is a silence of memory. It is a space where the noise of the legend fades away, and the quiet, complex truth of the past is allowed to breathe. The world can have its story, its monsters, and its saints, but in this final, quiet space, I can reclaim my own. It is a story with no audience, no headlines, no final, satisfying moral. It is just the simple, sorrowful, and beautiful story of a life that was filled with love, and a life that ended too soon, on a warm August night, in a quiet house on a hill. And in the telling of it, even if only to myself, there is a kind of peace, a kind of final, gentle stillness. The silence deepens as the world's memory begins to fray. The sharp, vivid colors of the story, once so immediate and shocking, are now fading, like an old photograph left out in the sun. The names, the faces, the dates, they are becoming trivia, answers to questions in a macabre parlor game. The visceral, human reality of the tragedy is being replaced by the cool, detached abstraction of history. From this vantage point, I can perceive the slow, geological shift in the way the story is told. New generations are born who have no memory of the event itself, no memory of the fear that gripped the city, no memory of the trial that captivated a nation. For them, the story is not a lived trauma. It is a piece of inherited folklore, a chapter in the long, dark history of American crime. They consume it differently. They watch the documentaries, they listen to the podcasts, they read the articles online. They are connoisseurs of a story, not witnesses to a tragedy. They approach the legend with a new kind of detachment, a kind of ironic, postmodern sensibility. They create memes with Manson's face. They make dark, humorous jokes about the crime. They treat the story as a piece of pop culture, a set of tropes and characters to be remixed and reinterpreted. The horror is no longer horrifying. It is just content. This new relationship with the story is, in its own way, another kind of erasure. It is a sign that the emotional core of the tragedy, the raw human pain, has finally dissipated, leaving behind only the empty, iconic shell of the legend. The story has become so famous, so endlessly repeated, that it has lost its power to truly shock. It is just the Manson murders, a familiar, almost comfortable piece of the cultural furniture. I watch as the physical world that was connected to the story slowly disappears. The Spawn Ranch, the dusty, dilapidated stage set for the family's madness, burns to the ground in a wildfire, its last vestiges erased by the cleansing indifference of nature. The courthouse where the trial was held is renovated, its architecture changed, the ghosts of the past paved over with new tile and fresh paint. The very geography of the crime is being rewritten, the physical landmarks of the tragedy vanishing one by one. And in this slow fade, I begin to feel my own connection to the world, to this place, loosening. The intense gravitational pull of the tragedy that has held me here for so long is beginning to weaken. The need to bear witness, to be the silent guardian of the truth, is becoming less urgent. The world has its story, however flawed, and it will continue to tell it, with or without my silent presence. What is left is not the story of the crime, but the story of the love that the crime could not extinguish. I see my sisters, now grandmothers themselves, telling their own children and grandchildren about the aunt they barely knew. They show them my picture. They tell them stories not of the actress, but of the girl, the sister, the person. They are keeping a different kind of memory alive, a small, private flame of truth that glows in the shadow of the massive public legend. They are remembering the person, not the symbol. I see my father, in his final years, his grief a quiet, constant companion, finding a kind of peace in his faith. He never spoke of hatred or vengeance, only of a deep, abiding sadness. He carried his loss with a quiet dignity that was, in itself, a powerful rebuke to the loud, garish sensationalism of the story. This is the part of the story that the legend never tells. It is the story of the survivors, the story of the quiet, resilient strength of the human heart, the story of a love that endures long after the headlines have faded and the monsters have become historical footnotes. It is a story that is told not in books or in films, but in the quiet, intimate spaces of family, in the shared memories, in the passing down of a name. In this fading light, my own role as a witness feels complete. I have seen the crime, I have seen the investigation, I have seen the trial, and I have seen the birth and the long, slow life of the legend. I have seen it all, and I have come to a place of understanding, a place beyond anger, beyond fear, beyond the need for justice in a world that can offer none. The silence that surrounds me now is no longer the silence of a crime scene. It is not the heavy, watchful silence of a house filled with ghosts. It is a different kind of silence. It is the silence of acceptance. It is the silence of letting go. The echo of the violence is fading, replaced by the much quieter, more enduring echo of the love that remains. The story is finally, truly over, and I am ready to be a ghost no more. The final tether dissolves. The connection to this place, to this hillside, to this memory that has held me for half a century, simply lets go. The gravitational pull of my own tragedy, which once felt as strong as the earth itself, is gone. And for the first time since that warm August night, I am free. I am no longer a witness to the past. I am becoming a part of it. The consciousness that has been me, this disembodied awareness, begins to diffuse, to spread out, like a drop of ink in a vast, clear ocean. The sharp, defined edges of my own identity, the memories of my life, the trauma of my death, they are all softening, losing their shape, becoming part of a larger, more ancient story. The faces of the people I loved, my mother, my father, my sisters, my friends, are no longer sharp individual portraits. They are becoming archetypes, symbols of love and grief. The face of Roman, my husband, is no longer the face of one man, but the face of all men who have lost, who have been forced to carry an impossible weight. His pain is no longer his alone. It is part of the great, sorrowful river of human suffering that flows through all of time. The killers, too, lose their individuality. They are no longer Tex or Sadie or Katie. Their faces blur. Their names fade. They are just a momentary, chaotic eddy in that same river, a brief, violent spasm of the darkness that is the other side of the light. Their motivations, their prophecies, their twisted family. It all seems so small now, so temporary, so profoundly insignificant in the face of this vast, eternal quiet. The legend they sought to create, the immortality they craved, is just a single, fading story in a library of infinite stories. And he, the man at the center of it all, the dark sun of their small, pathetic universe, he shrinks to his true size. He is not a prophet. He is not a devil. He is not a messiah. He is just a broken man who broke others, a hollow vessel who tried to fill his own emptiness with the pain of the world. His power, which once seemed so absolute, is revealed to be a fragile, fleeting illusion. He is a whisper, a footnote, a ghost who is already forgotten. The house on Cielo Drive, the stage for our final act, is gone. But in this expanding awareness, I see all the houses, all the rooms, where love has been found and lost, where life has begun and ended. My story is no longer my own. It is the story of every woman, every mother, every person whose life was cut short by a senseless act of violence. The particular details of my death, the rope, the knife, the word on the door, They are just the unique grammar of a universal language of loss. And my son, my beautiful unborn boy, I feel him now, not as a memory or a regret, but as a presence. He is not the tragic symbol of a life unlived. He is the quiet, perfect potential that exists in all beginnings. He is not lost. He is simply part of the great, silent mystery from which all life emerges, and to which all life returns. The profound, maternal love I felt for him is not gone. It has simply expanded, a gentle, warming light that holds no object, no form, but is simply a part of the fabric of this new, boundless existence. There is no more I. The singular point of consciousness that was Sharon Tate, the self that was forged in a specific time and a specific place, has dissolved. The story is over. The legend is over. The grief is over. The pain is over. There is only the silence. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence that is full, a silence that contains everything. It is the silence of the stars before they are named. It is the silence of the ocean in its deepest, most secret trenches. It is the silence of a seed, dreaming of the flower it will become. It is a silence that is not an absence, but a presence that is vast and peaceful and eternal. It is the silence that was there before the first word was ever spoken, and it is the silence that will be there after the last story has been told. It is the peace that passes all understanding, and in this final, perfect, all-encompassing stillness, I am home.